Hey guys, Michael here. In today's video I want to show you a little bit about the Modern Poker Theory video packages. So let's go. We see that totally we have 29.73%, while we only needed 21% to make the call. But since there will be post-flop betting, it's important to get a bigger picture of what is going to be our post-flop scenario. We can start off by checking out the hand versus range equity graph, so we can calculate this. Take a few seconds. And well, here we have on the x-axis we have the percentage of total flops going from 0 to 100%, and on the y-axis we have equity going to from 0 to 100%. So if we check out, for example, for hero to have hero is going to have only hero is going to have at least 50% equity or more in only 20% of the flops with this hand. And for example, in 50% of the flops is going to have at least 20% equity, so at least 20% equity in actually like 45% of the flops. So it's very narrow, the total flops where hero is going to have a lot of equity. Talking about, let's say, 80% equity, so 80% equity plus is going to happen only in about maybe 7% of all the flops. So it is really important to understand how frequently are you going to flop enough equity, and this is where we want to get to. Now, the total flops that exist in poker are 22,100, and here you can see all of them. For example, something like ace king queen, we have 64 different combinations of that. Aces, there are 4 of them. Flops like 7-2-2, pair boards, 24 of them different, two-tone and rainbow ones. And well, but what I'm interested in here is just equity, raw equity. So what flops are we going to flop over 75% equity? Check it out, and this will highlight immediately all of those flops. So we flop, of course, in the flops where we flop top 2 pair are really good flops, bottom 2 pair, full houses, trips, quads, of course, trips. So these are the type of flops where we where we will be flopping a lot of equity. But this is only about 3% of all the possible boards. And now next thing, we want to see flops where we flop good equity. So flops where jack-6 suited flop between 50 or 75% equity. Now we're talking about some middle pairs, flops where we flop middle pair, and some open-enders, for example. Some open-enders with overcards. Actually, no, just pair for the most part, yeah. And then we have flops where we flop weak equity, and this we have, of course, open-enders in gut shots for the most part, or situations where we flop a weak pair and our opponent can flop a much better pair. And okay, flops where we flop trash equity, or equity between 0 to 33%. And this is, of course, all of the flops where the hero will flop a just jack high card. Okay. Now the interesting thing is that, okay, these flops, for example, are going to be the vast majority of the possible flops, 65%. And in these flops, hero will really struggle to realize his equity, because he will be mostly just check folding these type of boards, very, very high frequency with this hand. And if we select all of the groups, we can see how much equity our hand has across all the different flops possible, right? Jack-6 will have 29.77%. Now, going to the groups chart, we can see how Jack-6 of suit will flop trash, a trash hand, in about 67% of all the possible flops. A strong hand in 3%, good hands between 50 to 75% equity in 18% of all the boards, and a weak hand in 33 to 50% of all of the possible flops. software is called CardRunner EV, and what it does is effectively a EV calculator or EV3 calculator. So we have here both two players, big blind and small blind, in a heads-up situation. So small blind is in position, big blind is out of position. The action starts on the river. This is the flop 2-2-2, turn and river 3-3. Now again, the bigger the bet size, the more bluffs can be moved from this branch into this branch, and now the this checking branch happens less frequency, and that reduces the EV of the out of position player. We can chart this using again the bet size from steps of half bet sizes from 0.5 to a total of 10, and go. As we can see here, and also in the table, the bigger the bet size with half pot increments, the higher the play with the polarized range EV. The build history, I will get into more details again about the whole PO Solver graphic user interface and how to set it up and use it properly in the next video of the series. But for now, I just need to show you how it works and get you the results so you can see it in action. After building the tree, we can run it, and it will just keep running iterations, adjusting its strategy until it gets to a point that it is very low exploitability. Again, I will explain all of this in greater detail later. Now, if we come to the actual strategy, we can see how each darker color represents a bigger bet size, and for the out of position player who has pocket kings, his strategy is to check pocket kings 100% of the time. When he checks, the in position player will use the biggest bet size, which is all in, and will be going all in 92% of the time, checking 4.8% of the time only. And again, it's only checking with queens with some frequency, and that will show us how the IPEV will be 95, and the out of position EV will be 4.8. So again, what happens here is the same thing, but in this situation, we just gave different bet sizes to the solver. We didn't give him the answer of calling 1 minus alpha, right? We're just giving a bunch of bet sizes, and what the solver did was to starting off with, just make a new tree from scratch. If you look at this, the GTO solver starts with all actions having the exact same frequency, and then it starts to change and estimate or calculate EVs after changing the strategies one way or the other, and then adjusting and counter-adjusting for both players until it gets to a certain EV. But if you look at this range, this is not a very good looking range. All of these hands are very bad actually and should not be played. So if we compare an actual see, maybe an actual GTO range, so let's look at this here, button with 20 big blinds. This is another solver, by the way. This program is called Monker Solver, and I will again discuss a little bit more about it later. But for now, all we need to care or look at is the button here. All of the players again have 20 big blinds. They all fold to the button, who now can make a min raise or actually go all in. And well, this is the min raising range, and there is a small all in portion. If we put together, let's bring a chart. Okay, if we copy this range and combine it with the all-in portion to see what is the total BPIP range, and here in PO Solver we can use these range arithmetics to add another range, paste it in here, combining both ranges. Let's do some rounding so it looks nicer, maybe a little bit more rounding to 0.1. Yeah, looks much better. This, and we can make the folding range, everything else, and include it. So here, very clearly we can see what how different is. Actually, let's just make this bit over here. Yeah. Okay, now it looks much better. So yeah, the range computed by the Pusherfold app is very different than the range computed by the GTO solver. Getting a PO solver window. PO solver has 4 main tabs. So there is the browser tab where you will be looking at the strategies. There is the post-flop tree building and calculations tab, the pre-flop tab, which we will see next, and the tree information tab. Let's start with the post-flop tree building and calculations tab. This one has 3 other tabs within it. So no limit for no limit hold'em trees, limit, and the version 1.0 style. So this is the previous version how PO solver used to look the first time it came out. We will be using the no limit one. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is enter ranges for both players. We have out of position and in position here. So we can click on the box to be able to enter a range in this window. We can enter a range by using the slider or typing the hands here. We can also use this box to enter a number for 50% range, for example, and we can also select the weight of the different combinations here by either using these plus and minus buttons or just manually entering a number, something like 0.25. Well, you might also have already noticed that my grid shows a number of combinations by hand instead of 100% of aces or 50% of aces or kings or whatever. I changed this in the settings. This is just a matter of selecting a checkbox to change that. Yeah, can use. There are many buttons here that are very useful. So, for example, you can select none. You can select all of it. You can select a range. Now, for example, for in position, we can do the same. We can just enter a range or use the 6 max button range here. Now we have player ranges in place. We can select the board, so we may might want to solve ace king queen board, and if we are playing something like 5-10 NL, we might see our button raise of 2.5x will be $25. Big blind call will be another $25, so $50 in the pot, plus the small blind will be 55 in the starting pot, getting to the flop. And then each stack will have 975 chips. Now, next thing to fill in here is the bet sizes for in position. So we can select, for example, that in position has the option to bet 33% of the pot and 67% of the pot. You all you have to do is separate them bet sizes by a space. Let's do the same, 33, 67, and also copy and paste 33 and 67 for the river. About raise sizes, raise sizes can be put as something as 4x, for example, or can be put as a percentage of the pot, so it could be 50% of the pot. This one, we are sitting on the small blind with king jack offsuit, and we have effectively 55 big blinds. The action falls around to the cutoff, who open raises to 2.2 big blinds, and I decided to go for a 3-bet. Typically I will use a bigger bet size here. This is stack depth, maybe 8 or 9 big blinds. Given the big blind is slightly shallower than the cutoff in me, I decided to go for a slightly smaller bet size, so I don't overcommit myself to call him off in case he comes over the top. So first of all, let's take a look to the ranges in play. So for the cutoff, he raising first hand. The cutoff, he is opening effectively with 80 big blinds against the button, so I think he will be opening maybe something like this, 37% hands. He could also be opening around, the 60 big blinds range, which is not very different. Even the 40 big blinds, all these ranges are very, very similar, so just expect him to be opening somewhere, along these lines, something along these lines. Now, as for me, I have a couple options here. I have 50 big blinds, and I have ranges for small blind defend versus cutoff. I have ranges for 60 and 80 and 40 big blinds. I don't have the 50. So for if I had exactly 60 big blinds, I will be 3-betting this more linear range, and if I was 40, I will be 3-betting this more polarized range, right? Now, given the big blind is shallower and I'm effectively less than 40 big blinds with him, I decided that 3-betting with a more polarized range here is also fine, so that I block his 4-betting range as well. The real solution should be a range that is somewhere in between, but I think it's for the effects of this video, it should be fine. So let's just clear this. We start with an empty Pure window. First thing to set up is the player ranges. So looking at in position, okay, actually here he's opening this range now. Actually maybe this range. Okay, let's give him the 60 big blinds. So when he faces a 3-bet from the small blind who is around 60 big blinds effective, he should be defending around something like this. Yeah, and so let's give him this range, copy range for call. So IP, let's go for the rounding 0.1 so it looks cleaner. Okay, so I expect the in position player to be calling this very linear range, trapping aces here sometimes, flatting jacks, tens, nines, eights with a very high frequency here. Yeah. So as for me, I will give myself this range, copy range for the 86% bet size, 3-bet, rounded. Okay. Now we need to set up the board. Okay, let's actually play out the hand, and then I will show you the rest of how to set up the simulation. So as played, it went check check, and the river is the 10 of spades. So now we want to have a small bet size here for 1/3 of the pot. We want to be able to bet here with sets. We want to bet some straights. We have flushes, but we actually want to check our flushes a lot here. And then, yeah, looks like our not flushes actually want to check a lot. And then the rest of our checking range is a bunch of 1-pair type hands and overcards. So when we check IP, he wants to go all in a lot because he's gonna have a lot of straights and a lot of flushes himself, and so by going all in he can also incorporate a lot of bluffs in his range. Once he jams with king jack, the only combo that really wants to make a call here is king jack with the king of spades. EV wise, the call seems to be very plus EV. So definitely made a mistake by folding here, since this is the only combo that really wants to call. I remember thinking for a while, I was like, man, this is really good bluff catcher, but at the same time I thought that I will have a lot of strong hands here, stronger hands, which I will have some flushes, I will have some straights, I will also have some sets that I decided to check, but looks like that is probably not enough. We also have to call stuff like pocket aces here, and even, you know, a hand like king jack is a better bluff catcher than pocket aces, because it blocks some of other combinations of value hands that IP will have. So yeah, king jack with the king of spades turns out to be a great bluff catcher here, making almost 3.5 big blinds per hand. So just a really great bluff catcher. Yeah, I should have definitely gone for it. I tend to, you know, in situations where I'm not sure if bluff catch or not on the river, I tend to fold, because population heavily under bluffs the river. But I think at the same time this bluff catch is just too good, and I should have called it off.